The Norse story, The Children of Odin, is brought to you by notaprofit.org, the place on the internet to find spiritual guidance powered by artificial intelligence. The Children of Odin, Part 4, Section Roman 2, Odin the Wanderer, Section Roman 2, Chapter 1. Odin goes to Mimir's Well, his sacrifice for wisdom, and so Odin, no longer riding on Sleipnir, his eight-legged steed, no longer wearing his golden armor and his eagle helmet, and without even his spear in his hand, traveled through Midgard, the world of men, and made his way toward Jotunheim, the realm of the giants. No longer was he called Odin Father, but Vegtam the Wanderer. He wore a cloak of dark blue, and he carried a traveler's staff in his hands. And now, as he went toward Mimir's Well, which was near to Jotunheim, he came upon a giant riding on a great stag. Odin seemed a man to men, and a giant to giants. He went beside the giant on the great stag, and the two talked together. "Who art thou, O brother?" Odin asked the giant. "I am Vafthrudner, the wisest of the giants," said the one who was riding on the stag. Odin knew him then. Vafthrudner was indeed the wisest of the giants, and many went to strive to gain wisdom from him. But those who went to him had to answer the riddles Vafthrudner asked, and if they failed to answer, the giant took their heads off. "I am Vegtam the Wanderer," Odin said, "and I know who thou art, O Vafthrudner. I would strive to learn something from thee." The giant laughed, showing his teeth. "Ho, ho!" he said, "I am ready for a game with thee. Dost thou know the stakes? My head to thee if I cannot answer any question thou wilt ask. And if thou canst not answer any question that I may ask, then thy head goes to me. Ho, 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 and now let us begin." "I am ready," Odin said. "Then tell me," said Vafthrudner, "tell me the name of the river that divides Asgard from Jotunheim." "Ifling is the name of that river," said Odin. "Ifling that is dead cold, yet never frozen." "Thou hast answered rightly, O Wanderer," said the giant. "But thou hast still to answer other questions. What are the names of the horses that day and night drive across the sky?" "Skinfax and Hrimfax," Odin answered. Vafthrudner was startled to hear one say the names that were known only to the gods, and to the wisest of the giants. There was only one question now that he might ask before it came to the stranger's turn to ask him questions. "Tell me," said Vafthrudner, "what is the name of the plain on which the last battle will be fought?" "The plain of Vigard," said Odin, "the plain that is 100 miles long and 100 miles across." It was now Odin's turn to ask Vafthrudner questions. "What will be the last words that Odin will whisper into the ear of Baldur, his dear son?" he asked. Very startled was the giant Vafthrudner at that question. He sprang to the ground and looked at the stranger keenly. "Only Odin knows what his last words to Baldur will be," he said, and only Odin would have asked that question. "Thou art Odin, O Wanderer, and thy question I cannot answer." "Then," said Odin, "if thou wouldst keep thy head, answer me this. What price will Mimir ask for a draught from the well of wisdom that he guards?" "He will ask thy right eye as a price, O Odin," said Vafthrudner. "Will he ask no less a price than that?" said Odin. "He will ask no less a price. Many have come to him for a draught from the well of wisdom, but no one yet has given the price Mimir asks. I have answered thy question, O Odin. Now give up thy claim to my head and let me go on my way." "Give up my claim to thy head," said Odin. Then Vafthrudner, the wisest of the giants, went on his way, riding on his great stag. It was a terrible price that Mimir would ask for a draught from the well of wisdom, and very troubled was Odin Father when it was revealed to him. His right eye, for all time to be without the sight of his right eye. Almost he would have turned back to Asgard, giving up his quest for wisdom. He went on, turning neither to Asgard nor to Mimir's Well. And when he went toward the south, he saw Muspelheim, where stood Surtur, with the flaming sword, a terrible figure, who would one day join the giants in their war against the gods. And when he turned north, he heard the roaring of the cauldron Vergelmer as it poured itself out of Niflheim, the place of darkness and dread. and Odin knew that the world must not be left between Surtur, who would destroy it with fire, and Niflheim, that would gather it back to darkness and nothingness. He, the eldest of the gods, would have to win the wisdom that would help to save the world. And so, with his face stern in front of his loss and pain, Odin All-Father turned and went toward Mimir's Well. It was under the great root of Yggdrasil, the root that grew out of Jotunheim, and there sat Mimir, the guardian of the Well of Wisdom, with his deep eyes bent upon the deep water, and Mimir, who had drunk every day from the Well of Wisdom, knew who it was that stood before him. "Hail, Odin, eldest of the gods," he said. Then Odin made reverence to Mimir, the wisest of the world's beings. "I would drink from your well, Mimir," he said. "There is a price to be paid. All who have come here to drink have shrunk from paying that price. Will you, eldest of the gods, pay it?" "I will not shrink from the price that has to be paid, Mimir," said Odin All-Father. "Then drink," said Mimir. He filled up a great horn with water from the well and gave it to Odin. Odin took the horn in both his hands and drank, and as he drank all the future became clear to him. He saw all the sorrows and troubles that would fall upon men and gods, but he saw, too, why the sorrows and troubles had to fall, and he saw how they might be borne so that gods and men, by being noble in the days of sorrow and trouble, would leave in the world a force that one day, a day that was far off indeed, would destroy the evil that brought terror and sorrow and despair into the world. Then when he had drunk out of the great horn that Mimir had given him, he put his hand to his face, and he plucked out his right eye. Terrible was the pain that Odin All-Father endured, but he made no groan nor moan. He bowed his head and put his cloak before his face, as Mimir took the eye and let it sink deep, deep into the water of the Well of Wisdom, and there the eye of Odin stayed, shining up through the water, a sign to all who came to that place of the price that the Father of the gods had paid for his wisdom. Section Roman 2, Chapter 2. Odin faces an evil man once, when his wisdom was less great. Odin had lived in the world of men. Frigga, his queen, was with him then. They had lived on a bleak island, and they were known as Grimnir the fisherman and his wife. Always Odin and Frigga were watching over the sons of men, watching to know which ones they would foster and train so that they might have the strength and spirit to save the world from the power of the giants. And while they were staying on the bleak island, Odin and Frigga saw the sons of King Hrothing, and both thought that in them the spirit of heroes could be fostered. Odin and Frigga made plans to bring the children to them, so that they might be under their care and training. One day the boys went fishing. A storm came and drove their boat on the rocks of the island where Odin and Frigga lived. They brought them to their hut, Odin and Frigga, and they told them they would care for them and train them through the winter, and that in the spring they would build a boat that would carry them back to their father's country. "We shall see," said Odin to Frigga that night, "we shall see which of the two can be formed into the noblest hero." He said that because Frigga favored one of the boys and he favored the other. Frigga thought well of the elder boy, Agnar, who had a gentle voice and quiet and kindly ways, but Odin thought more of the younger boy. Geirrod his name was, and he was strong and passionate, with a high and a loud voice. Odin took Geirrod into his charge, and he showed him how to fish and hunt. He made the boy even bolder than he was by making him leap from rock to rock, and by letting him climb the highest cliffs and jump across the widest chasms. He would bring him to the den of the bear and make him fight for his life with the spear he had made for him. Agnar went to the chase too, and showed his skill and boldness, but Geirrod overcame him in nearly every trial. "What a hero Geirrod will be," Odin would often say. Agnar stayed often with Frigga. He would stay beside her while she spun, listening to the tales she told, and asking such questions as brought him more and more wisdom. And Agnar heard of Asgard and of the dwellers in Asgard, and of how they protected Midgard, the world of men, from the giants of Jotunheim. Agnar, though he did not speak out, said in his own mind that he would give all his life and all his strength and all his thought to helping the work of the gods. Spring came, and Odin built a boat for Geirrod and Agnar. They could go back now to their own country. And before they set out, Odin told Geirrod that one day he would come to visit him. "And do not be too proud to receive a fisherman in your hall." "Geirrod," said Odin, "a king should give welcome to the poorest who comes to his hall." "I will be a hero, no doubt of that," Geirrod answered, "and I would be a king, too, only Agnar little." Good was born before me." Agnar bade good be to Frigga and to Odin, thanking them for the care they had taken of Geirrod and himself. He looked into Frigga's eyes, and he told her that he would strive to learn how he might fight the battle for the gods. The two went into the boat, and they rowed away. They came near to King Hrothing's realm. They saw the castle overlooking the sea. Then Geirrod did a terrible thing. He turned the boat back toward the sea, and he cast the oars away. Then, for he was well fit to swim the roughest sea and climb the highest cliffs, he plunged into the water and struck out toward the shore, and Agnar, left without oars, went drifting out to sea. Geirrod climbed the high cliffs and came to his father's castle. King Hrothing, who had given up both of his sons for lost, was rejoiced to see him. Geirrod told of Agnar that he had fallen out of the boat on their way back, and that he had been drowned. King Hrothing, who had thought both of his sons were gone from him, was glad enough that one had come safe. He put Geirrod beside him on the throne, and when he died Geirrod was made king over the people. And now Odin, having drunk from Mimir's well, went through the kingdoms of men, judging kings and simple people according to the wisdom he had gained. He came at last to the kingdom that Geirrod ruled over. Odin thought that of all the kings he had judged to be noble, Geirrod would assuredly be the noblest. He went to the king's house as a wanderer, blind of one eye, wearing a cloak of dark blue, and with a wanderer's staff in his hands. As he drew near the king's house, men on dark horses came riding behind him. The first of the men did not turn his horse as he came near the wanderer, but rode on, nearly trampling him to the ground. As they came before the king's house, the men on the dark horses shouted for servants. Only one servant was in the stable. He came out and took the horse of the first man. Then the others called upon the wanderer to tend their horses. He had to hold the stirrups for some of them to dismount. Odin knew who the first man was. He was Geirrod the king, and he knew who the man who served in the stable was. He was Agnar, Geirrod's brother. By the wisdom he had gained, he knew that Agnar had come back to his father's kingdom in the guise of a servant, and he knew that Geirrod did not know who this servant was. They went into the stable together. Agnar took bread and broke it and gave some to the wanderer. He gave him too straw to seat himself on. But in a while Odin said, "I would seat myself at the fire in the king's hall and eat my supper of meat." "Nay, stay here." Agnar said, "I will give you more bread and a wrap to cover yourself with. Do not go to the door of the king's house, for the king is angry today, and he might repulse you." "How?" said Odin, "a king turn away a wanderer who comes to his door? It cannot be that he would do it. Today he is angry." Agnar said. Again he begged him not to go to the door of the king's house, but Odin rose up from the straw on which he was seated and went to the door. A porter, hunchbacked and with long arms, stood at the door. "I am a wanderer, and I would have rest and food in the king's hall." Odin said, "Not in this king's hall," said the hunchbacked porter. He would have barred the door to Odin, but the voice of the king called him away. Odin then strode into the hall and saw the king at table with his friends, all dark, bearded and cruel-looking men, and when Odin looked on them he knew that the boy whom he had trained in nobility had become a king over robbers. "Since you have come into the hall where we eat, sing to us, wanderer," shouted one of the dark men. "I will sing to you," said Odin. Then he stood between two of the stone pillars in the hall, and he sang a song reproaching the king for having fallen into an evil way of life, and denouncing all following the cruel ways of robbers. "Seize him," said the king when Odin's song was finished. The dark men threw themselves upon Odin and put chains around him and bound him between the stone pillars of the hall. "He came into this hall for warmth, and warmth he shall have," said Geirrod. He called upon his servants to heap up wood around him. They did this. Then the king, with his own hand, put a blazing torch to the wood, and the faggots blazed up around the wanderer. The faggots burned round and round him, but the fire did not burn the flesh of Odin All-Father. The king and the king's friends stood round, watching with delight the fires blaze round a living man. The faggots all burned away, and Odin was left standing there with his terrible gaze fixed upon the men who were so hard and cruel. They went to sleep, leaving him chained to the pillars of the hall. Odin could have broken the chains and pulled down the pillars, but he wanted to see what else would happen in this king's house. The servants were ordered not to bring food or drink to him, but at dawn, when there was no one near, Agnar came to him with a horn of ale and gave it to him to drink. The next evening, when the king came back from his robberies, and when he and his friends, sitting down at tea the tables, had eaten like wolves, he ordered the faggots to be placed around Odin, and again they stood around watching in delight the fire playing around a living man, and as before Odin stood there, unhurt by the fire, and his steady and terrible gaze made the king hate him more and more. And all day he was kept in chains, and the servants were forbidden to bring him food or drink. None knew that a horn of ale was brought to him at dawn, and night after night, for 8 nights, this went on. Then on the 9th night, when the fires around him had been lighted, Odin lifted up his voice and began to sing a song. His song became louder and louder, and the king and the king's friends and the servants of the king's house had to stand still and hearken to it. Odin sang about Geirrod, the king, how the gods had protected him, giving him strength and skill, and how instead of making a noble use of that strength and skill, he had made himself like one of the wild beasts. Then he sang of how the vengeance of the gods was about to fall on this ignoble king. The flames died down, and Geirrod and his friends saw before them, not a friendless wanderer, but one who looked more kingly than any king of the earth. The chains fell down from his body, and he advanced toward the evil company. Then Geirrod rushed upon him with his sword in hand to kill him. The sword struck him, but Odin remained unhurt. Thy life runs out, the gods they are wroth with thee. Draw near if thou canst, Odin thou shalt see. So Odin sang, and in fear of his terrible gaze, Geirrod and his company shrank away. And as they shrank away, they were changed into beasts, into the wolves that ranged the forests, and Agnar came forward, and him Odin declared to be king. All the folk were glad when Agnar came to rule over them, for they had been oppressed by Geirrod in his cruel reign, and Agnar was not only kind, but he was strong and victorious in his rule. Section Roman 2, Chapter 3. Odin wins for him Ian the magic mead. It was the dwarfs who brewed the magic mead, and it was the giants who hid it away, but it was Odin who brought it from the place where it was hidden and gave it to the sons of men. Those who drank of the magic mead became very wise, and not only that, but they could put their wisdom into such beautiful words that every one who heard would love and remember it. The dwarfs brewed the magic mead through cruelty and villainy. They made it out of the blood of a man. The man was Kvasir the poet. He had wisdom, and he had such beautiful words with it, that what he said was loved and remembered by all. The dwarfs brought Kvasir down into their caverns, and they killed him. There, now, they said, we have Kvasir's blood and Kvasir's wisdom. No one else will have his wisdom but us. They poured the blood into 3 jars, and they mixed it with honey, and from it they brewed the magic mead. Having killed a man, the dwarfs became more and more bold. They came out of their caverns and went up and down through Midgard, the world of men. They went into Jotunheim and began to play their evil tricks on the most harmless of the giants. They came upon one giant who was very simple. Gilling was his name. They persuaded Gilling to row them out to sea in a boat. Then the 2 most cunning of the dwarfs, Galler and Fialar, steered the boat onto a rock. The boat split. Gilling, who could not swim, was drowned. The dwarfs clambered up on pieces of the boat and came safely ashore. They were so delighted with their evil tricks that they wanted to play some more of them. Galler and Fialar then thought of a new piece of mischief they might do. They led their band of dwarfs to Gilling's house, and screamed out to his wife that Gilling was dead. The giant's wife began to weep and lament. At last she rushed out of the house weeping and clapping her hands. Now Galler and Fialar had clambered up on the lintel of the house, and as she came running out they cast a millstone on her head. It struck her, and Gilling's wife fell down dead. More and more the dwarfs were delighted at the destruction they were making. They were so insolent now that they made up songs and sang them, songs that were all a boast of how they had killed Kvasir the poet, and Gilling the giant, and Gilling's wife. They stayed around Jotunheim, tormenting all whom they were able to torment, and flattering themselves that they were great and strong. They stayed too long, however. Suttung, Gilling's brother, tracked them down and captured them. Suttung was not harmless and simple like Gilling, his brother. He was cunning, and he was covetous. Once they were in his hands, the dwarfs had no chance of making an escape. He took them and left them on a rock in the sea, a rock that the tide would cover. The giant stood up in the water taller than the rock, and the tide as it came in did not rise above his knees. He stood there watching the dwarfs as the water rose up round them, and they became more and more terrified. "Oh, take us off the rock, good Suttung," they cried out to him. "Take us off the rock, and we will give you gold and jewels. Take us off the rock, and we will give you a necklace as beautiful as Brisingamen." So they cried out to him, but the giant Suttung only laughed at them. He had no need of gold or jewels. Then Philo and Galar cried out, "Take us off the rock, and we will give you the jars of the magic mead we have brewed." "The magic mead," said Suttung. "This is something that no one else has. It would be well to get it, for it might help us in the battle against the gods." "Yes, I will get the magic mead from them." He took the band of dwarfs off the rock, but he held Galar and Fialar, their chiefs, while the others went into their caverns and brought up the jars of the magic mead. Suttung took the mead and brought it to a cavern in a mountain near his dwelling. And thus it happened that the magic mead, brewed by the dwarfs through cruelty and villainy, came into the hands of the giants, and the story now tells how Odin, the eldest of the gods, at that time in the world as Vegtam the Wanderer, took the magic mead out of Suttung's possession and brought it into the world of men. Now Suttung had a daughter named Gunnlod, and she by her goodness and her beauty was like Gerda and Skadi, the giant maids whom the dwellers in Asgard favored. Suttung, that he might have a guardian for the magic mead, enchanted Gunnlod, turning her from a beautiful giant maiden into a witch with long teeth and sharp nails. He shut her into the cavern where the jars of the magic mead were hidden. Odin heard of the death of Kvasir, whom he honored above all men. The dwarfs who slew him he had closed up in their caverns, so that they were never again able to come out into the world of men, and then he set out to get the magic mead that he might give it to men, so that, tasting it, they would have wisdom, and words would be at their command that would make wisdom loved and remembered. How Odin won the magic mead out of the rock-covered cavern where Suttung had hidden it, and how he broke the enchantment that lay upon Gunnlod, Suttung's daughter, is a story often told around the hearts of men. 9 strong thralls were mowing in a field as a wanderer went by clad in a dark blue cloak, and carrying a wanderer's staff in his hand. One of the thralls spoke to the wanderer, "Tell them in the house of Boggy up yonder that I can mow no more until a whetstone to sharpen my scythe is sent to me." "Here is a whetstone," said the wanderer, and he took one from his belt. The thrall who had spoken whetted his scythe with it and began to mow. The grass went down before his scythe as if the wind had cut it. "Give us the whetstone, give us the whetstone," cried the other thralls. The wanderer threw the whetstone amongst them, leaving them quarreling over it, and went on his way. The wanderer came to the house of Boggy, the brother of Suttung. He rested in Boggy's house, and at supper time he was given food at the great table. And while he was eating with the giant, a messenger from the field came in. "Boggy," said the messenger, "your 9 thralls are all dead. They killed each other with their scythes, fighting in the field about a whetstone. There are no thralls now to do your work. What shall I do? What shall I do?" Said Boggy the giant, "My fields will not be mown now, and I shall have no hay to feed my cattle and my horses in the winter." "I might work for you," said the wanderer. "One man's work is no use to me," said the giant. "I must have the work of 9 men." "I shall do the work of 9 men," said the wanderer. "Give me a trial and see." The next day Vegtam the Wanderer went into Boggy's field. He did as much work as the 9 thralls had done in a day. "Stay with me for the season," said Boggy, "and I shall give you a full reward." So Vegtam stayed at the giant's house and worked in the giant's fields. And when all the work of the season was done, Boggy said to him, "Speak now, and tell me what reward I am to give you." "The only reward I shall ask of you," said Vegtam, "is a draught of the magic mead." "The magic mead," said Boggy. "I do not know where it is nor how to get it. Your brother Suttung has it. Go to him and claim a draught of the magic mead for me." Boggy went to Suttung. But when he heard what he had come for, the giant Suttung turned on his brother in a rage. "A draught of the magic mead," he said. "To no one will I give a draught of the magic mead. Have I not enchanted my daughter Gunnlod, so that she may watch over it? And you tell me that a wanderer who has done the work of 9 men for you asks a draught of the magic mead for his fee. O giant as foolish as Gilling! O oaf of a giant, who could have done such work for you, and who would demand such a fee from you, but one of our enemies. The Aesir, go from me now, and never come to me again with talk of the magic mead. Boggi went back to his house and told the Wanderer that Suttung would yield none of the magic mead. I hold you to your bargain, said Vegtam the Wanderer, and you will have to get me the fee I asked. Come with me now and help me to get it. He made Boggi bring him to the place where the magic mead was hidden. The place was a cavern in the mountain. In front of that cavern was a great mass of stone. We cannot move that stone nor get through it, said Boggi. I cannot help you to your fee. The Wanderer drew an auger from his belt. This will bore through the rock if there is strength behind it. You have the strength, giant. Begin now and bore. Boggi took the auger in his hands and bored with all his strength, and the Wanderer stood by leaning on his staff, calm and majestic in his cloak of blue. I have made a deep, deep hole. It goes through the rock, Boggi said at last. The Wanderer went to the hole and blew into it. The dust of the rock flew back into their faces. So that is your boasted strength, giant, he said. You have not bored halfway through the rock. Work again. Then Boggi took the auger again, and he bored deeper and deeper into the rock. And he blew into it, and lo! His breath went through. Then he looked at the Wanderer to see what he would do. His eyes had become fierce, and he held the auger in his hand as if it were a stabbing knife. Look up to the head of the rock, said the Wanderer. As Boggi looked up, the Wanderer changed himself into a snake and glided into the hole in the rock. And Boggi struck at him with the auger, hoping to kill him, but the snake slipped through. Behind the mighty rock there was a hollow place all lighted up by the shining crystals in the rock. And within the hollow place there was an ill-looking witch with long teeth and sharp nails. But she sat there rocking herself and letting tears fall from her eyes. O youth and beauty, she sang, O sight of men and women, sad, sad for me it is that you are shut away, and that I have only this clothes, in cavern and this horrible form. A snake glided across the floor. Oh, that you were deadly, and that you might slay me, cried the witch. The snake glided past her. Then she heard a voice speak softly, Gunnlod, Gunnlod. She looked round, and there standing behind her was a majestic man, clad in a cloak of dark blue, Odin, the eldest of the gods. You have come to take the magic mead that my father has set me here to guard. She cried, You shall not have it. Rather shall I spill it out on the thirsty earth of the cavern. Gunnlod. He said, and he came to her. She looked at him, and she felt the red blood of youth come back into her cheeks. She put her hands with their sharp nails over her breast, and she felt the nails drive into her flesh. Save me from all this ugliness, she cried. I will save you. Odin said. He went to her. He took her hands and held them. He kissed her on the mouth. All the marks of ill favor went from her. She was no longer bent, but tall and shapely. Her eyes became wide and deep blue. Her mouth became red, and her hands soft and beautiful. She became as fair as Gerda, the giant maid whom Frey had wed. They stayed looking at each other. Then they sat down side by side and talked softly to each other. Odin, the eldest of the gods, and Gunnlod, the beautiful giant maiden. She gave him the 3 jars of the magic mead, and she told him she would go out of the cavern with him. 3 days passed, and still they were together. Then Odin by his wisdom found hidden paths and passages that led out of the cavern, and he brought Gunnlod out into the light of the day. And he brought with him the jars of the magic mead, the mead whose taste gives wisdom, and wisdom in such beautiful words that all love and remember it. And Gunnlod, who had tasted a little of the magic mead, wandered through the world singing of the beauty and the might of Odin, and of her love for him.